Your final two problems are 9 and 10. They're going to put all of these skills together that we have been working on today. So, number 9, we have negative 4 minus 6a squared equals negative 268. So the first thing we're going to want to do, we're trying to get a completely by itself. Think of order of operations backwards. So I know we're multiplying the a by negative 6, but the first thing we need to do is get rid of the negative 4 out front. So how do we get rid of subtracting 4? We're going to add 4 to both sides. So those 4's are going to cancel each other out. We get negative 6a squared equals 268 negative plus 4. Make sure when you are typing that into your calculator or when you're thinking about it, you know that 268 is the negative number, 4 is the positive number. So the bigger one's negative. So we should get a negative answer still. So we get negative 264. Now we're trying to get the a squared by itself. So how do we get rid of multiplying by negative 6? What is the opposite of multiplying by negative 6? Divide both sides by negative 6. So these negative 6's are going to cancel out. We're going to have a squared equals, what's a negative divided by negative? Positive, good. And then 264 divided by 6. I just typed that into my calculator. Again, I don't expect you to know that off the top of your head, but that is 44. All right. We are trying to get a completely by itself, but it's currently a squared. We don't want it to be a times a. We just want it to be a. So what do? Take the square root of both sides. But wait, you wrote in the square root part. So what do you also need to remember? Plus or minus out front. So we have the square root and the squared cancel each other out. We get a equals plus or minus the square root of 44. But wait. Can we simplify? Think of 44. Are there any perfect squares in 44? Yes, there are. 4 times 11 is 44. And what's the square root of 4? 2. So we end up with 2 square root of 11. So a is equal to plus or minus 2 square root of 11. If you don't like how I'm writing that, you can write it as a equals 2 square root of 11 and negative 2 square root of 11. Woohoo! On to the last problem. So number 10, similar concept, just different numbers. So we have 7 minus 6n squared equals negative 317. What is the first thing we need to get rid of to get the n by itself? That positive 7 out front. How do you get rid of a positive 7? You subtract 7. So we have negative 6n squared equals, we have a negative minus a number. We're going to become more negative. So we have negative 317 minus 7. We're going to get negative 324. All right, so we want to still get n by itself. That's our end goal. That's been our end goal this entire notes page. So how do we get rid of multiplying by negative 6? It's been negative 6 a couple times on this, hasn't it? It can be any number, but we're going to divide by negative 6. So we're going to get n squared equals, because these negative 6's cancel each other out, a negative divided by negative is a positive, and we get 54. But that's not our final answer, right? The n is not completely by itself. It's n squared. So we want to get rid of n squared. To get rid of n squared, we're going to take the square root of both sides. But wait, you know what's coming, that plus or minus sign out front that we can't forget about, because a negative times a negative still makes a positive. So our square root and our squareds cancel each other out. We have n equals, let's think about 54. Are there any perfect squares in 54? Think of some factors of 54 here. I'm thinking 9 times 6 is 54. What's the square root of 9? 3. So we get n equals plus or minus 3 square root of 6. If you don't like writing it like that because it only looks like one answer and it's really two answers, you can write it like this. So n is a positive 3 square root of 6 or a negative 3 square root of 6. All right, that's our end of our notes for this section. I just want to bring this back to what we've been doing throughout the rest of the unit. So keep in mind our answers, for example, to number 3 when we got a positive 6 and a negative 6. Had we decided to graph this equation, we would have gotten the x-intercepts of positive 6 and negative 6. So this all ties together. Everything we've learned in Chapter 9 are all different strategies of solving quadratic equations. So sometimes graphing is the best option. Sometimes factoring is the best option. Sometimes using square roots is the best option. So these are all different strategies you can use to solve quadratic equations. I do want you to be familiar with all of these strategies because in certain cases, some work and others don't work as well. If we were trying to graph these and we were getting answers like 3 square root of 6 and negative 3 square root of 6, I have no idea what that graph would look like, right? I mean, that's like 3 times 2 point something, so it's around 6 point something. But that would be very hard to get an exact answer from a graph. So there are reasons and methods for why we choose each of these solution strategies, and we will go over those once we've learned all of our strategies. So far you've learned how to solve a quadratic by graphing. That was 9.1. 9.2, you learned how to solve a quadratic by factoring. 9.3, you learned how to simplify radicals, so that way in 9.4 you could solve quadratics by taking the square root. So that's the end of our notes for 9.4. Your assignments for this section, if you look on Schoology, you'll see that just like in 9.3, you have another worksheet to do. Now keep in mind the directions literally say you must show work to get credit. Remember how I mentioned at the beginning of the first video? Some of you did not show work, so you have not earned credit yet until you show work for all of your problems. So please work on this 9.4 assignment now, solving using square roots. If you don't have access to a printer, that's no problem. Just do it on a blank piece of paper and take a picture of that blank piece of paper and submit it. And once you finish this, you also have a Pearson Realize Assignment 9.4 homework number 48, I believe. Yes, it's 48. So go ahead and use your remaining time here to work on your 9.4 worksheet, your 9.4 Pearson Realize assignment. Remember, I do want you to submit your 9.4 notes and your 9.4 worksheet to Schoology. Just submit your Pearson as you normally would, and I will get on Pearson and transfer those grades over just like usual. Remember, if you have any questions as you're going through this, I am available through my email or through the discussion post on our Schoology page. So please feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions or concerns or just want to talk to another human being. So good luck on 9.4. I have high faith in you, as a lot of you were very successful on 9.3.